Good morning, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I am your host, Sharifa Hardy, and I have an amazing show for you today. I have some guests that are going to educate you, yet entertain you. We're going to learn what they've done during this time in history, as well as what you too can do to be successful with your business and your life. I'm your host, Sharifa Hardy, and I invite you to go ahead and share this video because you want your friends to learn too. Our first guest is Susie Turner. She is the founder and chief rhythm facilitator for Soul Shine Rhythm Experience. Good morning, Susie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you, Sharifa?
You look like you're doing great. I love your backdrop. I always start for some reason with backdrops. I don't know if it's something that just breaks the ice, but yours just looks so peaceful, so zen.
Oh, thank you. That's intentional. And it's actually kind of a cool story. When I got married about 6 months ago and I moved into my husband's house, and he had this empty spare room that I decided to make my little sanctuary. So I hung up this tapestry, and this is where I do yoga and just get quiet time from the teenager and the dog. But when everything went virtual, it became a really cool space because I had a sort of preset location that I could start broadcasting from. So it worked out really well.
Is that the space in your house where everyone else knows when you're there not to bother you?
Exactly.
It's like
And
mom's in her.
it's sort of yeah, and it's off the house a little bit, so it's not you don't have to go past it at
Mhm.
any time unless you intentionally are going to that room. So it's really easy to be forgotten while you're in this room, which is a nice feature.
I love it. So tell us, what is a chief rhythm facilitator?
Well, I'm a drum circle facilitator
Mhm.
and I'm also a drummer. So essentially, what that means is I carry a lot of drums around, but also I I use drumming as a tool and less so that I'm a teacher. I mean, I do teach on the side, but as a facilitator, my role is to utilize drumming as a tool for healing. And that comes in a couple of different ways through collaboration, through connection. It can be used in multiple environments, including education, the corporate team building, therapeutic settings, hospitals working with kids and people in recovery, at risk youth. I mean, the list goes on and on, as you can see. We can all use a little bit of healing, but there's certain populations where we find that rhythm as a tool, particularly for people who have been living in that stress response space for a long time. Rhythm really creates a beautiful way to regulate the brain so that we can facilitate healing. And I'm sure we'll dive in deeper as the show on, but essentially that is how I got drawn to it. Was I had gone through a very difficult time a whole bunch of years ago, and what I realized in retrospect that the one thing that I never stopped doing was drumming. And I was drumming with a women's West African drum troupe at the time, and we would perform and rehearse, and it was a constant in my life. And when I look back on it, I realized, wow, that was a community that was really supporting me through this really devastating time. And when I started diving into the why of that, I discovered this whole world of therapeutic drumming and learning why drumming is something that has existed in civilizations around the globe since the beginning of time. It's the universal, um, I guess, modality of music that you'll find everywhere from Antarctica to Hawaii and everything in between. So yeah, that's when I became a facilitator, and I wanted to take the beautiful benefits that I experience and really save the world with my drum. So
Oh,
that's my
wow.
mission.
I love it. I definitely want to talk a little bit more about it, especially with the entire stress response aspect of it, because right now the world has been in this stressful state. So let's see what we can learn from you. Our next guest is Brent Oberholtzer. He is a global leader in organization design and development at Org-ology. Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Good morning, Sharif. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for joining me.
No problem. Enjoy it.
What is Org-ology?
Org-ology, by the name, you can see ology is the study of, like psychology, sociology. So org-ology is the study of organizations.
Mhm.
And what we are is we are a group of psychologists and consulting psychologists, which are different types, that work with organizations. And really the primary goal is to make work less painful.
Mhm.
Right now, work is very painful. It has changed dramatically. One of the things we are seeing we have no real issue with working remotely because our entire staff has always been remote. We are headquartered in New York, but we have staff all over the world. We hardly ever see each other other than on Zoom or any other conference call. But working with clients has changed, and many of our clients have this opinion, and many people have an opinion that at some point, we will go back to what January was. And when you look at disasters and significant events in society, you never go back to what it was. You go to what the new normal is. And we're helping organizations define the new normal. What is work and life and structure of organizations going to be in the new normal? And one of the things that we have to work through as individuals and organizations and entire governments is we are going to go through a grieving process of what was, we have lost that. The way we worked and what we thought work was is going to completely change in the future. That was 8 to 10 hours of our life, 5 days a week. That is a significant amount of time. So part of this is there is going to be a grieving process. Right now, we're in denial. We don't believe that anything's going to change. At some point, there will be anger, there will be acceptance. We will go through the whole grieving process as countries, as organizations, as individuals. And that's something we help organizations get through. And we also help governments. A few years ago, I worked in Iraq for a year with the Prime Minister and his entire cabinet of restructuring the Iraq government. It was a lot of fun. Except ISIS showed up and the oil prices dropped in half. So it wasn't all that fun because of that.
I didn't even have to get to the ISIS and all of that. When you said you were working there and you said fun, I was like, I don't know. Maybe that was a different aspect or a different definition of fun. But I want to go back to something that you said, particularly the new normal. One of the things that we discussed on yesterday's show is that people tend to have this idea of there will be a particular time, a particular date, a particular reopening where we define as the new normal, when over time, what people do is they just kind of adjust to what life is now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of the great challenges of what has happened is it was turned upside down very quickly. And one of the analogies I've used recently with some of our clients is you can take an airplane and you can park that airplane, and that is a very easy thing to do. Getting that airplane back up to maintenance standards and back in the air takes a while. You can't just go in like a car and start your airplane and go fly away. It's going to take a lot of steps to get that mechanism, that piece of equipment, and the whole mechanism of flight and air travel back to a normal semblance of whatever it's going to be. And that's when people think that we're going to flip the switch and it's going to turn back on. We have to tell people that it's going to take a while to define what that new normal is. And it's hard for people to grasp that life has completely changed from what it was to what it's going to be. How we shop, how we go get groceries, how we interact with each other, much as we're doing today. That is all indicators of what's to come, but we haven't defined what it is that we're going to end up with. And I think that's something. Another great example to use is after 9/11, when you look at airport security and how we traveled before 9/11, and then you look at it after 9/11, it has significantly changed, but it was a gradual change. initially the pendulum swing, let's put armed guards everywhere in every airport. We've now swung back to let's have a decent semblance of security in airports. It's not too intrusive, hopefully. So there is a slow process to gaining footing and getting into the future. And that's something people don't want to accept. They're waiting for the switch to be flipped again. Okay,
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about that a little bit deeper. I want to introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Bryan Mattimore. He is the co-founder and chief idea guy of the Growth Engine Company. Good morning, Bryan. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Sharifa. Nice to meet you virtually. I'm well.
It's nice to meet you virtually as well.
Just a little bit about what I do. We have an innovation agency called Growth Engine. We help companies come up with new stuff. A lot of new products are the obvious things, and promotion and advertising ideas. But part of my work has been to really figure out how these ideation processes, as they're called. Some people don't know that term, but it's a synonym for brainstorming. These ideation processes are used to not only come up with new product ideas, but it could be cost cutting, it could be organizational development in Brent's world. It could be to have more fun at work, get a better rhythm going at work, to change the culture, mission, vision, values. We've done all those kind of sessions. So my expertise is I'm really an expert, if you will, in these techniques and way to tailor these techniques to different kinds of challenges. And then also qualitative research, classic focus groups, ethnographies, et cetera, that we use to further develop ideas. And by the way, it's a lot of fun, as you can imagine. It's fun, and it's also sometimes scary. People call up, the ASPCA in New York City called me up one time, and they said, could you help us figure out a way to get New Yorkers with apartments to adopt ex-drug dealers' pit bulls?
Oh, wow.
and that's a marketing challenge. And so that was fun, and we succeeded with that. But I do get a lot of very interesting calls, let's put it that way.
Okay, so I always leads me to the how. So how did you make that happen to get the ex-drug dealers pit bulls into the apartment? How did you do that?
Well, first of all, we use a whole bunch of different techniques in maybe a half day or a day-long session, questioning assumptions, 20 questions, wishing, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, some of the breakthroughs actually, we have another technique called worst idea technique, where you come up with bad ideas intentionally and then flip those. But I didn't want to do that because it'd be too weird, kill the dog, et cetera, et cetera. So I instead changed that and, quote, invented a new technique. So let's do silly idea. And that worked really well. So a couple of silly ideas, dress them up for the Halloween Day Parade in New York City or the Halloween Night Parade. And that led to an idea that became a national campaign to personalize the dogs, to show their personality, not necessarily dressing them up, but do a better job of communicating why each of these souls, if you will, frankly, inside of each of these animals was unique and special and wonderful. That was one idea. Another idea was to do virtual adoptions, set up cameras so people could watch the dogs and then hopefully fall in love with them. And the third idea was take the dog out for a walk and ask a New Yorker to hold it and then run away. We didn't do that idea, but that was a silly idea. So, but I think that's a good example of how much fun you can have with these processes.
Okay, so I'm sure being the chief idea guy, when you went through this whole pivot or transition or pause in COVID-19 from March until May where we are now, you had to have some ideas. Were you someone who was working in the office at that time? Were you working at home? What was life like for you?
Well, we have an office, and now we're working at home like everybody else in the world. The last session I did was actually for Amazon out in Seattle, so it was end of January. I got out of there just in time. It was with 50 of the recruiting people to come up with more creative ways to recruit and retain talent, which was, of course, also timely because they've experienced such growth in these times. But what we've done, the pivots we've made, one is virtual ideation. And happily, the technology now enables us to do that. I was on a session Wednesday, and we used Microsoft Teams, and we had breakout rooms, and of course, you can do that with Zoom as well. So the technology is caught up to make virtual ideation viable. And then the other pivot for me is I said, well, I'm not going to fight this. I'm just going to write another book.
Yeah, I have found that to be common. I mean, I think that's wonderful. I think when we are in quarantine and we're unable to, our ideas just start to flow. Our creativity starts to flow. People have told me about writing books, writing scripts, learning languages, learning skills.
It does feel like we're back in school, doesn't it, with all the webinars we're watching? I don't know about you guys, but I watch 2 or 3 or 4 webinars a day. And it's, they're fascinating topics. You have world-class experts. I presume this would be one of them, and it's kind of fun. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I know I have fun every day meeting at least 3 or 4 new people, sometimes 5. I want to introduce and bring into the conversation our next guest, Ms. Teresa Douglas. She is a people manager at Kaplan Test Prep. Good morning, Teresa. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
You are welcome. Thank you for joining us. If nothing else, I get to learn all these new titles that I never knew existed. Maybe I should. But what is a people manager?
Well, that's a big question, but at bottom, I talk to people, I help them grow, I get them developed in their career. And especially during this time, I was very grateful to hear Brent talk a little bit about the new normal. Mm-hmm. I've been remote since 2010, and it's been interesting talking to people and writing on that subject because now everybody's remote.
Right.
And having written a book about it, it's been interesting to see how quickly we went from talking to people about whether or not they can work remotely and just seeing everybody do it and seeing all of the ideas that are coming out. And I really do feel like that conversation has sped up 20, 30 years, what we might have waited that long to get. We have a lot of people now who are really trying to make things work and really focusing, I hope, on the psychology of people who are stuck in their homes, who weren't used to being there, and just trying to grow and develop professionally as we're in this new medium, as we're dealing with our current normal.
When did you publish your book?
It just came out January 2020. So it's called Working Remotely. It's for employees from the employee perspective and how you can empower yourself and work as your own CEO of your own life because you're in your office of one, but now you're connected to everybody around the world. It isn't isolated so much as we're now newly connected to people I never would have met before had I just been working in a physical office.
The end of January.
Hey, Sharif, if we're going to hawk some books, I'll just mention my book. The newest one is 21 Days to a Big Idea. And I'm mentioning it just because it's a daily exercise program to help people come up with a big idea. And so I think this is a particularly good time for it as well. Not quite as timely as Teresa's, but close, I think.
You have your book with you?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we got... Here's this is the English version, okay, and this is the in Turkey, the Turkish version, and there's some other versions as well. But this one, we actually crowdsourced the cover because and a guy in Indonesia did this, or we did a contest on 99 designs because the publisher had 2 designs. They said, which one do you like? I said, well, I hate them both. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you got to pick one. I said, no, I can't. And so I said, well, I'll pay for the cover. And so this is what we got. I was happy with it.
It looks nice. So what are some of the steps in the 21 days that you do to get to a big idea? I know you can't give all of them away.
No, I'd be happy to give them all away, but we don't have enough time. But no, it's really start with a passion. identify 50 or so possible arenas you'd want to ideate in, come up with we call it a success footprint. So define what makes a successful idea for you. Is it $1 billion idea, a $1 million idea? Once you have that success footprint, then there are different thinking strategies. So the obvious one is find a problem and solve it, but also help people self-actualize, adapt to technology, save time or money. Those are 5 strategies, and then there are 9 different techniques in there, like worst idea or questioning assumptions or 20 questions or wishing. And then finally, the book ends with if you have, and you generate a big idea every day. So at the end of this process, you'll have 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 big ideas, all of which will not be big, but from those you can probably get a really good one. And then we have a concept development technique in there called billboarding, and then you're off and running.
One of the things I was going to say to Teresa, and I'll go back, is that for you, Bryan, it almost seemed like the perfect storm, because one of the things that people have said previously is, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. And that's one of the things that you are not hearing at all these days, because we all know, if nothing else, everyone has time. We have time right now because we're sitting at home, and the majority of people, they're working in some form or fashion, but we have more time than we've ever had before. So they can take those 21 days to come up with a big idea. Teresa, for you, having your book come out at the end of January discussing working from home, that's like the perfect timing, the perfect, perfect storm, because all of a sudden the whole world is working from home.
It was an amazing thing. I think we could all say that we would have loved that the pandemic never happened.
Yes, absolutely.
So that hands down, I would wish that instead. But it has been interesting, the amount of people who are open to talking about it now, and are willing to even delve into those deeper topics of how do we still behave as humans to each other when we don't see each other every day? How do we make those connections? How do we function in our office where we're just by ourselves, but not as one person, but as a connected whole? So working through that has been amazing, talking to people. I will say that there are many people who have time during the pandemic. Working parents are not one of them, because they're working, they're educating their children, they're trying to live and work and do all these things at the same time. So there are many reasons to have things to do and learn, but we also have to acknowledge that there are people out there who haven't been alone in their own space for months.
Absolutely. That's one of the reminders when I made a post on social media, and I said, if you're not taking this time to learn something or to grow, then you're wasting this opportunity. And the Facebook people came back and just, Sharifa, just if it's okay, if people just want to sleep or whatever, because for some people, this is the first time in years when maybe they had a day off or time off. Maybe they've been working nonstop for the last 20 years or 30 years or 15 years, and they just want to sit on the couch. They don't want to use this time to do anything else. And if not, that's okay as well. We shouldn't pressure people or obligate people, because like Brent was saying, and I want to go back over to Brent, people are going through this period of denial in which they don't know what to do. What are your thoughts on that, Brent?
I think one of the things, and it's an interesting point that Teresa brings up, is that many people are overwhelmed by what they're doing and being at home with having to help educate their kids, homeschooling, which is not something anybody signed up for. Well, most people didn't, and now they're doing it. Along with trying to work and stay relevant in the workplace while they're at home. And a lot of people are feeling that they're not being as relevant in their work as they were if they were actually being in an office and socialized. And I think that's something that people are going to have to get used to and adapt to, is how do I show relevance in a distant way? And there are ways to do that for people. And again, I liked your idea. People do have time. They're no longer commuting to work and back. My commute's very short. It's about 10 yards. I'm in a New York apartment, so it's not really far. But by cutting out that commute people appear to be in meetings more rested and more engaged than maybe they were after driving an hour, hour and a half to try to get to work, or sitting on a bus or a train if you're in a city area, and then going into work and trying to get things done. And how engaged were you at work? I think people are actually more engaged, but they don't feel that they're more engaged. And they have to find a way to feel relevant in this new norm of social work, social distancing, and working at home. And I don't really see a problem, much as Teresa. We've been doing remote work for years. It works really well. The clients are the ones that have a hard time with it, because we're usually face-to-face with clients, and that everybody is struggling with. I'm trying to figure out, how do you do a virtual drum circle? I think there's ways to do it.
That was going to be my question.
Because I think there is a way to adapt anything to either Zoom or meetings or Teams, whatever technology you want to use. There was an interesting article came out that people are not utilizing Slack and other email tools nearly as much as they did prior to this, and they're going to utilizing activities like Teams and Zoom and other video connections, because just sending the email isn't enough, and just tracking all your emails in one place like Slack does, which is nothing more than a great place to stuff everything you need to know and not know where anything is. It's my opinion.
Hey, Brent, I just want to say to that, I'm amazed, because it used to be clients, we do a phone call. Now it's almost, per force, we're doing a Zoom call. And I just find that fascinating that we've changed to that.
And I think it's interesting, you're the same age approximately as me, and the Jetsons, the cartoon years ago, had video calls, and now everybody's doing them, and we're functioning as a society and as an organization via video. What a lot of people didn't realize, and it's come back to get some of them, is that all of these are recorded and they all have transcripts available. And you have to be careful what you say in this type of environment, because someone could get a hold of that transcript, especially if you're dealing with sensitive material and or HR issues between leaders and managers and HR, and you say something that is then on a transcript that could be read by someone else. So there is a lot of litigation and other issues that are going to come out of this that we don't know yet. But it's really, be smart, be cognizant of what you're doing, and understand the technology and its abilities.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to what Sharifa was saying earlier about the maintaining the connection. So Bryan mentioned typically you'd make a phone call, but now people are leaning more toward the video calls. I think that has just a lot to do with very basic seeing another human being and connecting in real time. And I was really blown away. And Brent, I have done a couple of the virtual drum circles. Actually, I've done more than I would do typically for the community, because I got so much feedback from people saying, I need this, we need this is important in my life, and now it's gone. And it really surprised me to a certain extent, because they were very gracious with the learning process. For me, translating something that is so primal and so raw energy and so tangible into something that would work in a virtual platform. So that really encouraged me to keep that going. But I've found, even with my family and making phone calls, I don't see them often anyway, but I just want to see their faces. I just want to know that they're there. And I think that even in the professional setting is still relevant.
Susie, I'll let you ask it, Teresa, but Susie, I just wanted to follow up with what you were saying. One of the guests on another show was telling me she's a performer. She performs on the stage, and so she's an extrovert. So she was saying it was very difficult for her, because even though she can do her performance, do her stand-up or whatever it is that she does, she can do it virtually. She can stand up and do it in front of Zoom and have 100 people watch, but she feeds off of being on the stage. She feeds off the energy of the crowd. So I can pretty much guess or assume that when you do your drum circles, it's the energy of the people and the drums and everything that just makes it an amazing experience. Do you feel like that?
Absolutely. There was a definite adjustment period. The first one that we did was actually an experiment. I guess you could say that with a lot of folks. We're all
Mhm.
experimenting to a certain degree. But the first one we did as a Zoom call because it was an invite only part of this professional wellness organization I belong to here in, and I was scheduled to present at the monthly meeting, which I was really excited about because here we had a large group of alternative wellness people who are really interested in learning about different modalities outside conventional medicine. And so it was these are my tribe, you know.
Yeah.
So I had a whole program that I had planned, and it's highly interactive.
Mhm.
And so the leader of the group came to me and she said, "Well, we've decided," this was very early on, this was like early March. She decided that, you know, the responsible thing to do is to move this to an online forum. And so that's what we did. And setting it up as a Zoom call was actually, of course, we had to do different things because of the lag and you can't really play together in real time. So I had to get creative on the spot, which was a little scary at first. But the interaction piece there and being able to see their faces, being able to pause between rhythms and talk a little bit about what we were doing, how we were feeling, which is a large component of the program that I do. But what was even more interesting to me was that evening, I was winding down and I had this distinct sense that I had had visitors over. You know that feeling when you've had company and you feel that this kind of, oh, it's nice. I was with my people, you know,
Yes.
and I could have swore that I had people in my house. And then later on, it was just the spirit of that engagement that lingered. And
Mhm.
so as I moved into doing more of the circles, I had two platforms going at the same time. I would have Zoom and Facebook Live going simultaneously. And even if I only had a handful of visitors on the Zoom call, it still felt more, the, the importance of that engagement came through from an energetic perspective, like you were saying. Of
Mhm.
course, I can't feel the vibrations of the drums, but my husband's a drummer also, so thankfully he does these events with me
Oh,
online. Yeah, and
that's
so
so wonderful.
it is. But we learn as we go, and it's kind of like when you, this is how I attribute it in my mind. I kept thinking, okay, it's not the same, it's not the same. And then I started thinking, when you read a great book and then they
Hmm.
come out with a movie
Yes.
and you see the movie and you're like, the book was so much better. It's the same thing in my mind because
Hmm.
I had to stop making it be something it wasn't and embrace it for what it was and find the best way to do it in that way, make it the best that I can do it in that medium. So,
I appreciate that you said that because I feel like we do get interaction via Zoom or via video call. It's different from being in the same room with somebody. You can't hug them. I mean, you wouldn't hug them now at the moment, but there is that thing. We've made a jump because we've had to. Years ago, work was going somewhere and working in a field and doing things with your hands. And then we all made that jump to knowledge work being a thing, where you sit in front of a laptop and you get up at the end of the day and there's nothing in your hands. It's something that happened on the internet. It happens on the computer. And now we're feeling those connections through the computer. And it maybe isn't the same. Maybe we need more of those in order to hit the same level. But it is so, so important that we're having those moments, that we're feeding that desire and that need and trusting each other to be, as you were checking in with feelings and saying, how are we doing right now? Because it's so important when we're in this medium that we do that. So it's interesting to hear someone say that you still get something from that, even though it's a different thing.
I just want to say something that Susie said, that sort of feeling of someone being there. I have a friend who is a very good friend. He actually married myself and my wife, quite a while ago now. He's a spiritual counselor, and his thought, and he's been sharing it with different groups, is that those who have relatives who are isolated because of the virus, he's teaching them how to, quote, travel there, soul travel or whatever you want to call it, to travel there and be with them. And whether you believe that occurs or not, it's incredibly healthy and rewarding and wonderful for those loved ones who can't get to be with their loved ones.
That was interesting, Bryan. But you can't just leave us with jump in with that and then just leave. I need more. Have you traveled to your loved ones during this process? Have you, maybe this is a new technique that you're learning during this COVID-19?
Well, there's spiritual literature out there about the processes of soul travel, and you can do that. Astral projection was just to the astral plane, and that was early stuff. But there are books available around this discipline of soul travel, and so the idea is you could not only travel to other physical environments, but higher spiritual planes as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's Bryan. It's actually, did I mute myself? No, I'm here. That was some of the feedback that I got initially when we started doing these virtual circles, because it became too. We certainly couldn't all drum together, like I said before, because of the lag. So I'm not to be in it to be an egomaniac, and so me being in front of people, just sitting there playing my drum for them, was a really uncomfortable space for me initially. Not because I am not a good drummer or don't know what I'm doing. It's just like, it's not about me. This is about the circle. This is about the community. And the community that I created here in Austin, we've got over 700 people now that come and go to our circles, because we do it every month. And when they started reaching out and saying that they wanted to interact, anyway, to my point, I was sitting there and I told my husband, let's just jam, because that's essentially what a drum circle is. It's a very organic experience. You start a rhythm. As a facilitator, I'll lay down a very simple pattern with their own rhythm, which is why it becomes so powerful, is because it's not planned. I'm not telling you what to play. It's you putting yourself on the drum and joining with everybody else to create something beautiful. And so I decided to just do that with Matteo and myself. And so I would start drumming and he would drum, and we had this rhythm going, and people would drum at home. And when I was on Zoom, I could see them on their drums. I couldn't hear them, but I could see them on their drums. And then I could see them dancing, and I saw them moving. And then I'd see people come into the room behind them and look, what are you doing? And then they start dancing. And there were moments where I could actually feel the vibration. And I think that speaks to what you were talking about, Bryan, with that projection. And when it would all stop, there was that coming down moment. And to me, it's magical. I don't know how else to explain it. And I know that when you have a actual literal drum circle experience, it's a very visceral experience. And I mean, without getting too deep into this of it, when we talk about the universal rhythm, that's the heartbeat, right? That's something that we are all exposed to. That is a common ground for every living being on this earth. We have experienced time in the mother's womb, and that first rhythm we are associated with is the heartbeat. And so we often will incorporate that into our sessions. And I'm happy to do an example of that with y'all today if the time permits. But
we have a couple of minutes, so let me just, let's do something quickly.
Okay, cool. So here's what I invite you to do. If everybody can mute themselves right now, just so we don't have everybody together. So I'm going to use, this is called the buffalo drum. It's a Native American frame drum, and it's very deep and resonant. Just want to make sure. Can everybody hear that? Okay. So what I'll do, and you can either close your eyes, you can put your head down, you can, whatever is a comfortable, relaxing space for you. I'm going to play the heartbeat rhythm. And what I invite you to do is focus on your breath and focus on what shows up for you rhythmically and where your mind goes in this moment. So just a little taste of what we like to do to end some of our circles. I can almost guarantee that everybody, see, I get goosebumps just thinking about what they have experienced during that time, you know? Everybody's experience is going to be different. Some people go to a really meditative space, others get energized. Sometimes, particularly if you've got some musical inclination, talking to you, Brent, maybe you've got a riff going in your head and you wanted to jam along with me. So these are all different ways that we can express ourselves, and I think that's a huge part of alleviating stress, certainly. But thank you for engaging with me in that. I could do that all day long.
You are welcome.
Susie, I wanted to share a thing we did for corporate America around this, which was similar. I'd seen this guy on CBS Sunday Morning, this was probably 20 years ago, and he did something called junk jams. And so the idea was that, you know, he was a percussionist, and so he would get junk, literally from a junkyard, and have different vibrations and sounds. And so we did this as a corporate event. I couldn't believe it. We got away with it at Unilever, where we brought in just a ton of junk. It looked like a junkyard, literally, in the hotel room. And everybody got these you know, what do we call them? Whatevers. And so he let us, and everybody was playing this unbelievable music, most of whom had absolutely no musical talent. And so it was this wonderful coming together that was extraordinary. And so thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You nailed it right there. It's the most accessible instrument because you don't need any experience. For anybody who was told at one point in their life, you don't know how to play music, or, you know, those stories that stick with us when we get those messages when we're real small. This is a place, if you have a heartbeat, you have rhythm. And I say that every event I do. And this, particularly the team building events where you've got people who are, you know, kind of stuffy or maybe uptight. By the end of it, they are grooving in their chairs. Their inner rock star is front and center. And it is that release. And I appreciate that story, because it's so fun to hear how the trajectory has grown over the years and become more acceptable as a form of team building and healing.
I agree with you. Everybody has rhythm, but I have been told, please never sing out loud. Oh, yes, guitar, but please never sing. And that's, my wife says that, just please just don't sing. Which it is hard when you get into that moment. When you're either playing or just getting a rhythm that you just want to break out and just start singing. And it is hard, especially if you don't sing well, to not do that.
Well, Brent, I promise if I ever find you at one of my events, you can sing your little heart out.
All right. Thank you. It's interesting as we talk about natural rhythm and rhythms in individuals. We actually believe organizations, and you've probably all heard the phrase organizational culture. An organization has a culture. It also has subcultures within the culture, much as nations do. The same thing is organizations have personality, and organizations have a rhythm of work, and a rhythm of ingenuity, and a rhythm of innovation. And those rhythms are things that people have to feel and look at and pay attention to. When you can look back at the history of Apple was very innovative, and they had a rhythm of innovation. Now they have a rhythm of just making small modified changes to the same product and keep trying to sell you more and more. They were very innovative, and they had a really good innovation rhythm. That has got lost. Where did that happen, and what can they do to bring that back? And that's something you have to help organizations understand, that you have rhythm, you have personality, yes, you have culture also. But how do you work all three of those elements into becoming the best organization you can be?
And what happened to your culture when you went remote temporarily? Because for many people, in the old days, in the before times, you would think about it, you would structure how you were going to do it. But in March, for many people, it was get your stuff, you're going home. And in that hustle and bustle to get all the tech right, maybe we weren't thinking about the culture. Maybe we weren't thinking so much about how do you continue to be an inclusive, a friendly, an energetic place, whatever your particular personality was. And that's one of the things I fear at this point. We've been, depending on where you are in your pandemic and the locality you're in, we've been in this for 1 or 2 months. And what norms have taken over, because we started this from a hurried up place, from a non-mindful place, because we had to. It was an emergency. People left the office. So what are we doing right now? What can we think about as we're maybe taking a little bit of a breath to step back and look at our interactions with people? Whether that person...
agree. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I definitely agree with you, Teresa. But one of the things that I've seen during the last couple of months is that companies have gone in phases and they've gone in stages. And so that first initial stage was grab everything you have and go home. And then I think as executives or CEOs of companies, they begin to look at it and say, okay, what can I do to keep the culture of the company while my employees are at home? And I've seen some very creative ideas. One company, they have pajama day, and all the employees are in pajamas sitting there. But they, then I had another company who they did wellness day or had wellness. Like they took into account a lot more about wellness. So I think it goes back to one of the things that Brent was saying earlier. It's grief, it's the levels, and it's like when you look back. Yes, it was hurried, but what can we do now to keep the same culture, the same environment that we want to have? Because one of the things that I always talk about is when you go into any company, you have to learn the culture. And that's the difference between their policy, because you may see a company that their policy is, we love everybody. We support everybody, but then they have the good old boys club that actually runs the company, so it may be different, but I see a lot of companies who are taking that extra step to maintain that closeness, that connection, and the culture of the company during these times.
Well, the good news
Sharifa, oh, sorry. I was just going to build on that, we've actually seen as awful and terrible, and now it's personal. We've lost some friends because of the pandemic, et cetera. As awful as it is, we've seen some companies actually become more flexible, more agile, more lean, more creative. And I heard an unbelievable quote yesterday, a webinar I was on. They said, this transformation that our company has experienced could never have happened through the corporate office, through the CEO, through his leadership. The speed and dramatic nature of their transformation could never, they were saying, have happened in any other way. Teresa, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think you're up.
Well, I was saying that the good news is that culture is a living thing. So my end point was, this is not whatever things started like or where they may be now, it's not a guarantee, it's not your fate. That we can all build a great culture, because I have seen those things too. People are just opening up across the world in the company and bringing that humanness again, because before this, maybe our children never showed up at our video calls. Maybe they were never at the office, but they're there now. And people are seeing our homes in the background. It makes us more human. Mm-hmm. And it's such a wonderful opportunity to bring that humanity even more into the workforce and build something that is more livable, where we're taking those breaks in the middle of the day, go enjoy the sunshine, or whatever it is, where we can be, all of us, bring all of the things that we are into our day and not just wait for the weekend to work on those passion projects.
Excellent point. Excellent point. That's one of the things that I've been discussing with the guests as well, is the different backdrops. Zoom sent out the email, yay, we have backdrops now. You can change your backdrop to be anywhere in the world you want to be, any photo, yada, yada. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what, maybe I'll get a nice Ash Sharifa background, a backdrop with the logo, and then I said, you know what? I really like my backdrop. I love the home feeling. I love people to see the people that I love the most. And that was important to me. And it also went a long way towards the connection and the vulnerability, and just, it's honest, it's authentic, it's who I am, as opposed to this other place. Some people enjoy them. We have a lot of fun. I just decided against it.
Yeah, I think it's a really wonderful contrast to the overproduced, Instagram world where you see everything between filters and planned and I mean, I don't even know how people keep their brand up, let alone like do the actual work because they're so busy with. But and to what you were talking about, Teresa, with the work life balance, I found having a teenager at home. I have a 14-year-old son, and I have a puppy, and, and a business, and another business. I have a gigs that I've got going simultaneously, trying to reinvent and whatnot. And what I'm noticing is being really compassionate to my son's needs as a young man because he's so self-sufficient. But there's a lot going on with him. He was transitioning from eighth grade to high school. And so his eighth grade year, like so many children, I'm thinking about the high school seniors especially, kind of got cut off without any closure surrounding the end of the year, right? So he's an actor, so they didn't get to do, just in his case, they didn't get to do the cast party, which when you're 13, 14, that's a really big deal.
Yes.
They didn't get to do the school dance that he was nervous and excited about. And he was also accepted to do a Boy Scout leadership training camp that he was so pumped for, and he didn't get to do that. So I'm home focused working on keeping things going and keeping revenue going because I'm in a live event person. Like my events are about the physical gathering of people. And so that's out the window. And so trying not to be so self-involved with that I can't listen to what he's going through. And then also get him on board with his courses and reminding him, you need to do this work if you want to go to high school. And so what I noticed is we ended up, and hormones, don't even get me started on the hormones. But we ended up together, I would say like a year's worth of angst coming out of him in a 3-week period, and it sort of forced us in a beautiful way to work through those challenges and have those conversations when they're happening, not okay, let's talk about it after work when I get home. Let's talk about it right now. What's going on, buddy? Let's ways we did that was to go for those walks, take the puppy out, get the rhythm of movement to get out of that beta stress brain, and let's get into some what's going on with you conversations. And it's been very fruitful. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was in a different space or if he was, not there. He was at school stressing out. So it helped our relationship in a really unique way, I think, too, on a personal level.
Oh, that is so beautiful. But it also reminds me, I think Teresa said it earlier. I know someone said it earlier about the pets for having their dog or something. And what I've seen in the majority of the shows that have been where there have been interruptions is it's either the children or the pets. The children or the pets, they wander in the background. They're like, Mom, what are you doing? Dad, what's going on? And we've had dogs and cats back on the banister, but I've seen a complete attitude change. I don't know if any of you remember, it was probably about 5 to 10 years ago, but it was the British news reporter who he was working, and then his nanny and the kids come in, and the nanny's like, oh my God, you're interrupting Dad while he's working. She brings the kids out. Now during all of this, everybody's so accepting. It's like instead of no, mommy is working, it's like, hop up here, let's sit down, let's talk. So it's just a different way of including everyone. I don't know, did you see that? You know which one I'm talking about, Susie?
Oh yeah, I've seen. That's hilarious because everyone's so frantic and
Yes.
trying to usher the kids out and the nanny. Yeah, I've seen that one.
And now it's just normal. It's the new normal. They're little coworkers now, whether they're hairy or just minors.
I have a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, and so adorable because he's actually in New York City. He's a stock trader, and he's a go, go, go kind of person. We actually went to high school together, but he moved to New York. But now that he's working at home, he has a daughter. His daughter is 6, and from day one, he named her the intern. So for the last 2 months, we've been watching these stories of the intern and what the intern does. And it's just the cutest thing because he's always like, well, now the intern wants a break. Now the intern decides she has rights, and maybe the intern wants to get paid. And so if you really are just, kind of tuning in, you really think this is like some 20-year-old, 25-year-old intern that's helping him. And it's his 6-year-old daughter. And it's just the cutest thing to watch or thing to follow on social media. So we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance. And we're going to start again with you, Brent.
I think the biggest thing I would like people to do is follow us on their favorite social media channel. Just type Org-ology, and we're on every channel. You don't have to follow on every channel. Just pick one because it's the same material on every one of them. But yeah, and feel free, anybody, to reach out to us. We love talking to people that are going through challenges with their organization or with individuals within the organization. We're always more than willing to talk to people and help them find a way.
That is so beautiful. And it's interesting that you said you don't have to follow us on all of them. And that's typically what people do. It's like, no, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not on Twitter or LinkedIn, but I love Facebook. And I'm on Instagram, but I don't hardly use it. So yes, there's a platform for everyone. Bryan, what do you have for us?
Well, I guess the takeaway, obviously people can contact us at growth-engine.com, our website. But I think the takeaway is that people should never feel that they can't come up with an idea, frankly. Our work is all about that. And the books, the 3 books I've written, Idea Stormers, 21 Days to a Big Idea, et cetera, they're all about helping not only people come up with ideas, but actually self-actualize in unique and wonderful ways. So to me, it's my way of contributing to the world to have people self-actualize in unique ways and actually be therapy, if you want to call it that. The openness that creativity brings is a profound and wonderful thing.
Great. Words to live by, Teresa.
I would say I would leave people with the idea that right now, during this pandemic, you may be working remotely unexpectedly, but if you spend some time being mindful and thinking about the advantages that you might have during this situation, you might find that you're growing in unexpected ways, that you're getting more out of life. That is my hope for you. Please understand you're the CEO of your life. You have more power now in your office of one than you did in your office. So that was away from your home. So please look at it that way. You can reach me at teresamdouglas.com, but my wish for you is that you grow during this time, even though it may be stressful.
Thank you. Susie.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and back on that idea of growth. And with drumming, we can create some real fertile ground to help enable that growth. And so what everybody's talking about here, from launching yourself creatively to find new way to do the same thing. With drumming, we can really get out that energy that we all are rolling around with at the end of the day, right? So it's that stress response, it's that disconnect from our body. And so what drumming does is it allows that mind-body integration to give you that playful release, that spirit that we had as a child that makes you feel like every day is a brand new day. We can do that with drumming. And the beautiful thing that I've gotten out of this virtual world is now I can drum with people worldwide. So we're going to start offering some online drum sessions in addition to our drum circles, our virtual drum circles. We've got a sunset circle coming up on Saturday night. And you can follow me on social media, Soulshine Rhythm Experience, Facebook, for all of the details.
Definitely, you're welcome. Definitely go ahead and follow all of our guests. We have had a global pandemic that has birthed a global drum circle. See, there's a blessing in every curse, and I definitely love it. I want to thank all of you for being a guest on today's episode of the Roundtable Talk Show. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch the show. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and support the show and support our guests. Support it by sharing the show, but take a look at the description in the website. Check out everyone's bio. Go to their website, follow them on social media. And if you are interested in guests, please visit the website at AskSharifa.com. I will be back Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, everyone have a safe, a blessed, and a happy Mother's Day. Bye now.